Otters are fast-moving.
Unlike other big rallies,
Cockpit earlier at about 7 a.m. A group from the Coast Guard.
Welcome to #G8Vote 2013.
Today on Rappler, the government and the Moro Islamic Liberation Front signed the deal on power sharing. A month after Typhoon Yolanda, the death toll rises to nearly 6,000. And Thailand's Prime Minister calls a snap election.
Hello, I'm Maria Ressa. Welcome to Rappler, your social news network. 1 month after our super typhoon hit the Philippines, environmentalists warn about the continued degradation of nature, from global warming to the accelerated disappearances of many unique species. We are coming to you live from Anvaya Cove in historic Morong, Bataan, where the effort to save the endangered olive ridley turtle continues. Every year, the turtle comes to these shores to nest. The nesting season starts in September and ends in February. In this video shot in the middle of the night, a sea turtle goes back to the ocean after laying about 50 eggs. These turtles are an endangered species, largely because they have few remaining nesting sites in the world. Their population of turtles declined drastically over the decade. Let's go directly to Thailand. The Prime Minister calls a snap election Monday to try to defuse the kingdom's political crisis, but protesters promise to continue their fight against government with an estimated 140,000 demonstrators flooding the streets of Bangkok. Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra faced more than a month of street protests, with demonstrators demanding her government be replaced by a People's Council. On Sunday, Thai opposition lawmakers resign en masse from Parliament. In a televised address Monday, Yingluck announces she would dissolve Parliament and hold a general election, quote, as soon as possible. The polls are expected to be held on February 2, but protesters say they are not satisfied with new elections. Protest leader Suthep Thaugsuban promises to, quote, uproot the Thaksin regime. Thaksin, Yingluck's brother, was ousted by royalist generals in a coup 7 years ago. Tensions remain high in the kingdom after several days of street clashes as police used tear gas and water cannons against demonstrators. The protests are the biggest and deadliest since 2010, when dozens of people were killed in a military crackdown on mass pro-Thaksin rallies. Pro-EU Ukrainian protesters topple a statue of the Soviet Union's founder, Vladimir Lenin, in Kiev after thousands gather for a new protest against President Viktor Yanukovych's government. The protesters fill Independence Square to denounce Yanukovych's rejection of an EU pact under Kremlin pressure. Dozens of mass protesters tear down the 3.4-meter-high statue of the Bolshevik leader after putting a rope noose around Lenin's neck. The protests in Ukraine raged for more than 2 weeks after the government announced it was stopping the work on political and free trade agreements with the European Union. Here in the Philippines, the government and the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, or the MILF, are one step closer to signing a final peace pact. Both sides sign a deal on power sharing, one of the most contentious issues in the negotiations during talks in Kuala Lumpur Sunday night. The agreement specifies the powers reserved for the central government and those that will be exercised independently by the Bangsamoro political entity. The deal creates a ministerial form of government with at least 50 legislative members. The panels only need to resolve the annex on normalization, which involves sensitive issues on decommissioning and structure of the police force. In their joint statement, both sides say they hope to sign the comprehensive peace agreement by January 2014. In July, both sides signed the wealth sharing annex. They also signed the transition annex in February. All 4 annexes will complement the framework agreement on the Bangsamoro, signed in October 2012. The death toll from Super Typhoon Yolanda, international name Haiyan, nears the 6,000 mark with over 1,770 still missing. The National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, or NDRRMC, reports at least 5,924 people are dead. 1 month after the strongest typhoon hit land in the Visayas, the casualty toll remains unclear. Task Force Cadaver continues to retrieve bodies in Tacloban City. More than 100,000 people remain in 136 evacuation centers nationwide. The cost of damage to infrastructure and agriculture is pegged at 35.5 billion pesos. Experts say the reconstruction of destroyed communities will take years, with millions of homes destroyed. Rumors of a tsunami quickly spread among some areas devastated by the super typhoon. On December 1, a tsunami scare in Antique, Western Visayas, pushes thousands of people who live near the shores to leave their homes. This came after residents wrongly interpreted a decrease in the water level as a prelude to a tsunami. The false information quickly spread. The Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology tells residents not to believe supposed tsunami alerts unless these come from government authorities. Tsunamis were often mistaken for the storm surges that caused the widespread damage during the super typhoon. Tacloban City Mayor Alfred Romualdez hits the national government for failing to respond when the super typhoon slammed into the city a month ago. Speaking before the Congressional Oversight Committee, an emotional Romualdez says his repeated request for soldiers to help in the relief efforts was ignored. He adds, people were feeling frustrated seeing all these military planes and trucks, and yet they sat alongside their dead. I asked for more support, but I was never given that. Romualdez says Interior Secretary Mar Rojas asked him to sign a letter authorizing the national government to take over local government functions. Rojas supposedly told Romualdez that this was, quote, a gray area in law. President Benigno Aquino is leaving for Japan for the ASEAN-Japan Commemorative Summit, where the two countries will discuss a possible defense treaty. Aquino says he is open to a possible pact with Japan in the wake of growing tension in the West Philippine Sea, better known as the South China Sea. Japanese Defense Minister Itsunori Onodera says they're looking at a framework agreement to be able to deploy troops faster in situations like Typhoon Yolanda. In his visit to Manila, Onodera highlights the need for a peaceful resolution of the regional conflict with various countries concerned about China's air defense identification zone. That's when it was established over disputed islands in the East China Sea. Japan also promises to help the Philippines defend its territory. Backtracking on Malacanang's previous statement, President Aquino orders the Justice Department to investigate how parole was granted to former Batangas Governor Jose Antonio Leviste. Aquino is also mulling possible sanctions for the Board of Pardons and Parole. In 2009, Leviste was found guilty of killing his employee. In May 2011, he faced a complaint for evasion of service of sentence over allegations he left the new Bilibid prison compound 3 times that year. In defense, Leviste says prison officers approved his excursions. He was acquitted from the charges, but Bureau of Corrections Director Ernesto Jokno was forced to resign. Aquino says that while the process for parole was reportedly followed, it is the, quote, spirit of the law that he wants thoroughly reviewed. The president also says he was surprised by the grant of parole, adding, how can you say good conduct when he was found outside prison while supposedly serving his sentence? So I do not understand why he would even be considered for parole. The National Statistical Coordination Board, or NSCB, says poverty incidence among Filipino families falls only slightly in 2012, despite the Philippines' high economic growth. In a press conference Monday, NSCB Secretary General Jose Ramon Albert says the percentage of poor families is at 19.7% in 2012. It's almost unchanged compared to the 2009 figure of 20.5% and 2006 figure of 21%. Albert says the number of poor Filipino families rise to 4.2 million in 2012 from 3.8 million in 2006 because of the country's growing population. The government considers a family poor if its monthly earnings are less than the poverty threshold. The poverty threshold for 2012 is 5,513 pesos per month, the amount required for a family to meet basic food needs. Commerce ministers praise a World Trade Organization agreement on international commerce, calling it a historic boost for the trade body. The pact includes commitments to facilitate trade by simplifying customs procedures. The Washington-based Peterson Institute for International Economics estimates the measures could create $1 trillion in economic activity and 21 million jobs if properly implemented. British Prime Minister David Cameron says the deal would, quote, provide a lifeline to the world's poorest people by cutting barriers to trade. The accord is the first global agreement struck by the Geneva-based body since its 1995 founding. But development charity Oxfam says the deal was vaguely worded and would do little for the world's poor. South Africans start a nationwide day of prayer, the formal start of a week-long state funeral for the freedom icon Nelson Mandela. U.S. President Barack Obama and his wife Michelle will be among 80,000 people attending a memorial service Tuesday in the Soweto Sports Stadium. The commemorations end in Mandela's burial on December 15th in Kunu, the rural village where he spent his early childhood. Among the many world leaders scheduled to attend the funeral are French President François Hollande, the British and Canadian Prime Ministers David Cameron and Stephen Harper, and UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. A new study shows Europeans with long-term exposure to particulate pollution run a higher risk of premature death even if air quality meets European Union standards. The study says the biggest source of concern was PM2.5, or particle measuring under 2.5 microns. PM2.5 is so small it can lodge deep in the lungs, causing respiratory problems. The study says the risk of early death rose by 7% with every increase of 5 micrograms of PM2.5 per cubic meter. The International Agency for Research on Cancer classifies outdoor air pollution as a leading cause of cancer. Let's now look at Rappler's Wrap for today, a list of the 10 most important events around the world you shouldn't miss. At number 4, hundreds of South Asian workers riot in Singapore on Sunday after being enraged by a fatal road accident. 18 people are injured in the city-state's worst outbreak of violence in more than 40 years. The disturbance started in the congested Little India district when a 33-year-old Indian man was hit and killed by a bus. Police say about 400 people on the scene began to riot, attacking the bus and police vehicles. 27 South Asian workers are arrested. At number 5, North Korea confirms the uncle of leader Kim Jong-un is removed from office for committing criminal acts and leading a counter-revolutionary faction. The story shocked many because Jang Song-tak was once considered the second most powerful leader in North Korea. The North Korean state news agency says what Jang did caused, quote, tremendous harm to our party and the revolution. And at number 10, Miss Venezuela Alice Henrik is crowned Miss Earth 2013 at the pageant held Saturday. In the question and answer portion, Henrik was asked how ecotourism contributes to the protection of the environment. The 22-year-old is an advocate of clean water. In her Miss Earth profile, she shared how she helped in the recollection of trash in the Los Roques Island chain. For the full top 10, visit Rappler.com's The Wrap. Every story on Rappler has a mood meter, which gives you 8 emotions to choose from. Click how you feel, and your vote comes down to the mood navigator that's in the middle of the front page that crowdsources the mood of the day. It also gives you the top 10 stories that have affected our readers and our viewers the most emotionally. If you take a look today at our mood navigator, these are the 10 stories that have gotten the most number of votes on the mood meter. Let's take a look. The top story in the Philippines, government, the MILF, agree on power sharing. Interestingly, 12% angry, 78% happy. The story that's gotten the most number of votes is this, a video from Tacloban 1 month after the super typhoon hit. The video shot by Patricia Evangelista and her team, the men of Village 88. It is tragic to see the aftermath. You have a whopping 93% sad. That mood of the day, the story with the most number of votes, leading to the mood of the day today. On the 1-year anniversary today, most people are sad. That is Rappler's Newscast for today, Monday, December 9, 2013. Visit Rappler.com and watch our newscast Monday to Friday. Tell us how you feel on our mood meter and help us crowdsource the mood of the day. I'm Maria Ressa. We are live from Morong, Bataan. As we say at Rappler, tomorrow begins today.